Lots of talk, but little action. Doomsday predictions dominate day one of the COP26 climate summit. Serial offender, a Taiwan-founded company accused of crimes against the environment. It's a small world after all. As one COVID case locks down China's Disneyland in Shanghai, Taiwan further eases restrictions. And we meet the Taiwanese-American woman who could become Boston's next mayor. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. The first major deal of the COP26 climate change summit in Glasgow was made on Monday, with over 100 countries pledging to end deforestation practices by 2030. TaiwanPlus reporter Jaime Ocon gives us an update on the day's biggest developments.
Climate change is one of the biggest challenges facing the world. It's a fact that many of the leaders attending COP26 are well aware of, and the urgency behind the message has given some momentum on day one of the two-week conference. Experts are calling on leaders to come through on pledges made and to turn words into action as to avert a climate crisis. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson described global warming as a doomsday device strapped to humanity.
We can get real on coal, cars, cash, and trees. We have the technology to deactivate that ticking doomsday device.
But activists say the lack of meaningful commitment is just priming that device to go off. According to the independent Climate Action Tracker, current policies will result in the global warming of 2.9 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. This is well in excess of the 1.5 degree benchmark agreed at the Paris conference in 2015. In Glasgow, U.S. President Joe Biden said there is no more time to waste in the push for net zero carbon emission.
We're standing at an inflection point in world history. We have the ability to invest in ourselves and build an equitable, clean energy future, and in the process, create millions of good-paying jobs and opportunities around the world. Cleaner air for our children, more bountiful oceans, healthier forests and ecosystems for our planet.
But he faces a battle to enact his climate policies back in Washington. Lawmakers from the ruling Democratic Party have been debating and so far failing to agree on an economic package that includes $555 billion in climate change provisions. From the world's biggest economy to one of its fastest growing economies, India is also at the summit, and it made new commitments to address the climate crisis.
भारत अपनी अर्थव्यवस्था की कार्बन इंटेंसिटी को 45% से भी कम करेगा और पांचवा वर्ष 2070 तक भारत नेट जीरो का लक्ष्य हासिल करेगा। ये पंचामृत क्लाइमेट एक्शन में भारत का एक अभूतपूर्व योगदान होंगे।
But that 2070 target is 2 decades after the deadline agreed at the Paris Climate Conference in 2015, which was set to avoid temperatures from rising beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius. Among the challenges, some signs of progress. More than 100 countries will sign a pledge to end deforestation. It is the first major deal to come out of COP26 and potentially a sign of things to come. Renowned naturalist Sir David Attenborough had words of encouragement for world leaders.
In my lifetime, I've witnessed a terrible decline. In yours, you could and should witness a wonderful recovery. That desperate hope, ladies and gentlemen, delegates, excellency, is why the world is looking to you and why you are here.
With eyes fixed on events in Scotland over the next 2 weeks, the message is clear. Actions speak louder than words. Kama Xu and Jaime Ocon for TaiwanPlus.
With world leaders gathering in Glasgow to set new policies and targets for climate change, the spotlight is falling on those with the biggest carbon footprints, industries. Due to loose government regulations, their practices often go unchecked. As Bing Wang reports, Taiwanese company Formosa Plastics polluting practices have impacted communities around the world.
Formosa means beautiful island. It was a name given by Portuguese sailors when they first caught sight of what is now known as Taiwan. But for residents living near Formosa plastic plants and many parts of the world, it means something very different. To them, Formosa represents decades of illegal dumping and polluted waterways. Diane Wilson is a fourth-generation fisherwoman. 2 years ago, she led a group lawsuit that eventually reached a $50 million settlement and a promise of zero discharge with the Texas Formosa Plastics plant. The plant was set up in 1983 in a small town called Point Comfort. It had been discharging pollutants for decades before a U.S. federal judge ruled it a serial offender.
The school is no longer there because it was very close to Formosa, and they've had some, I remember when they had like a 10,000-pound release of hydrochloric acid, and it not only covered the town, it started going over the bay.
The settlement was the largest ever reached in the United States in violation of the Clean Water Act. But environmentalists say it did not stop the Texas facility from dumping pollutants into the waterways.
There is a huge amount of plastic and pellets that has been in the bay. It goes clear across the bay. When we, right now we have workers that are still testing, taking photographs on the shore, clear across the bay from Formosa, and the pellets and the powder show up every day.
Formosa Plastics Corporation was founded by Taiwanese brothers Wang Yongqing and Wang Yongzai in 1954. They came from a family of rice farmers and grew up in poverty in Taipei. They are credited with building a small local plastics company into one of the largest petrochemical conglomerates in the world.
Formosa Plastics is seen as a pride of Taiwan. They build hospitals, they've given to charity, they've employed tens of thousands of people all over the world. But what resonates most with the Taiwanese people is their rags to riches story.
Their production plants are scattered across Taiwan, the United States, China, and Southeast Asia. And in many of those countries, there have been protests against their polluting practices. And here in Taiwan, the story is quite familiar. Dr. Jobin from Academia Sinica has been focusing his research on Yulin County in central Taiwan. And that's one of the biggest petrochemical zones housing Formosa Plastics factories.
So the plant started operating 20 years ago in 1998. And in less than 10 years, they saw a sharp rise of cancer in that area. Rise is very, very fast. And so fast that early age in people in their 40s, in their 50s, die of lung cancer.
TaiwanPlus several times requested an interview with Formosa Plastics. In an email, they acknowledged our request but did not respond to our questions. 3 major environmental groups based in the United States released a report in early October documenting decades of Formosa Plastics violations. They spent 2 years investigating and analyzing the company's history.
Their history of abuses is actually quite long. These include regular toxic emissions well beyond what the company is permitted to emit.
The report found that the Taiwanese conglomerate had been slapped with penalties globally for violations totaling more than $500 million since 1999.
It includes violations of worker safety. And we also saw in Formosa Plastics Group's history a pushback against government regulation, against government protection, against public mobilization for safety and protection and for remedy and justice.
Taiwan is struggling to exist or to survive in the international community. I think here the company, Formosa Plastic, has also a responsibility to not to become a symbol of, to give such a bad image of Taiwan in general.
At a pivotal time when Taiwan is trying to raise its international standing, Formosa Plastics' record of polluting the environment is in stark contradiction to the country's progressive values. Researchers and activists say that Formosa Plastics is not only tarnishing its own image, but also that of Taiwan, the beautiful island after which it was named. Chris Ma and Bing Wong for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's Marine Corps is sending 40 Marines to the U.S. military base in Guam for a month of training. Special Operations Forces from the U.S. Marines came to Taiwan earlier this year to help train Taiwan's troops on assault boat missions. The U.S. Security Force Assistance Brigade this year also set up a presence in northern Taiwan's Hsinchu County for the first time. Wen Ti-sung is a political scientist at the Australian National University. He told me that it shouldn't be a surprise that US personnel are training Taiwanese to use high-grade US military arms following the sale of this equipment to the country.
It's almost only natural because Taiwan does purchase a lot of US advanced military equipment, and these are state-of-the-art assets that really need cutting-edge expertise, human expertise, to figure out and to learn how to operate them. So naturally, as US sell these military assets to Taiwan, they will also be sending technical personnel, including, for example, if you sell warplanes, then they will need to have pilots who help the Taiwanese counterparts how to operate them. So in that sense, are the US helping Taiwanese military service members learning how to operate these things? Is it a kind of security cooperation? Is it kind of technology know-how transfer? And would that require them to be present on Taiwanese soil? Most likely, and it's almost only natural when you think about it. In terms of Taiwan's expressed faith in American commitment to Taiwan, and again, I think Tai being the commander-in-chief in Taiwan, also really Taiwan's global ambassador in a sense. It's the natural thing, it's the right thing for her to say as well, that she has faith in the friendship support of other like-minded friends and partners around the world, and US being obviously a very major one.
I think that China's anger at these comments are warranted.
China's anger is very predictable and in line with China's diplomatic interests. For China, obviously, it doesn't want to see any expansion of Taiwan's international space. They want to find ways to deter that. So if support and voicing sympathy towards Taiwan's expanding international space from the West and other liberal democracies around the world is what's going to help Taiwan expand international space, then Beijing will be saying, hey, I don't like this. This is hurting the feeling of the Chinese people, and that these things should stop. So sometimes Beijing may be reacting very negatively, almost overreacting to developments that's only predictable.
In the past week, Taiwan's recorded 0 local COVID-19 cases. The government is lifting restrictions on nightlife venues, including bars, clubs, dance halls and hostess tea houses. Our reporter Sandy Chi has more.
当然是哀嚎啊！大家这段时间都没有工作，大家都跑去做散工啊，对不对？有时候散工也不好找，一天薪水也没多少钱，所以大家当然是希望副业啊。
Complaints like this have been commonplace since Taiwan imposed COVID restrictions in May. Now, entertainment venues in Taipei that do not employ hosts and hostesses are back in business. But there are still COVID measures to observe.
员工的部分一定要照册，他必须要提出相关的疫苗注册的证明。那顾客的部分现在有2个，一个是黄卡，一个是健保快易通。那我们的同仁会用抽查的方式，那我们的警察也会每天去做临检。
Adult entertainment venues that employ hosts and hostesses will be allowed to apply to reopen from November 9th and welcome customers back from November 16th. Meanwhile, new quarantine rules have been announced for the 2022 Lunar Year holiday. There will be partial easing in the 2-week quarantine period for travelers arriving from non-high-risk countries. Elsewhere in Asia, Japan is easing its 10,000-person limit for sporting events and concerts. But in China, Disneyland had a real Halloween nightmare over the weekend. A single COVID case sent Shanghai Disneyland into snap lockdown with police blocking the exits. Tens of thousands of visitors and staff must undergo coronavirus testing before they can leave the park. Rick E. and Sandy Chi for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwanese-American Michelle Wu is favored to become the next mayor of Boston when the city holds its municipal election on Tuesday. Wu leads her opponent, fellow Boston City Councillor Anissa Essaby-George, by 30 points, according to the latest poll released by Emerson College. Whoever is elected will be the first woman and first person of color to serve as the city's mayor. Wu's parents immigrated to the United States from Taiwan. She was born in Chicago and moved to Boston to attend Harvard Law School. She has served on the Boston City Council since 2014.
There's a stark choice in this election, and we are standing on the brink of history where Boston has a chance to choose between nibbling around the edges of the status quo or taking the big, bold actions that we have needed for a long time. I'm ready to be a platform for all of Boston to have a voice in this, for every single neighborhood, community to be part of shaping our future.
Coming up after the break, a time for light, not dark. We take a look at what it means to celebrate the Day of the Dead in Mexico. Stay with us.
Hello, Taiwan. I'm Dr. Jane Goodall. I'm so very happy to see Taiwan sharing its wonderful stories with the world. I've been fortunate enough to visit Taiwan on many occasions, and I've been to several different parts of the country. So I know firsthand something of the beauty of its wildlife and the marvelous people who are working to save these places. So good luck with this wonderful program.
And I want to know, what do you want to see more of on TaiwanPlus?
Hello, I'm Fabio Grandjean. Taiwan to the world, see you on TaiwanPlus.
Congratulations to TaiwanPlus.
Hello, Taiwan. I'm Mike Yamashita, National Geographic photographer. My stories have been as varied as the landscape itself, from Taiwan's top 10 tourist attractions to oolong tea, aquaculture, and the Taiwanese fishing industry, and most recently, the Daijia-Mazu pilgrimage. From TaiwanPlus, I would like to see stories on more of the same, about the varied cultural and historical aspects of the country.
Taiwan to the world, see you on TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan to the world, see you on TaiwanPlus.
Hello, Taiwan. I'm Baron Wanga, and greetings to you all from my humble homeland of Nauru. It's a worthwhile and appropriate platform whereby the unique perspectives of the people of Taiwan are portrayed and presented honestly. Taiwan to the world. See you on TaiwanPlus.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. A reminder of our top story. The first major deal of the COP26 Climate Change Summit in Glasgow was made on Monday, with over 100 countries pledging to end deforestation practices by 2030. This Netflix thriller is about the secretive world of international spies.
Why intelligence?
The world's a dangerous place.
But the dangerous world of Pine Gap has just collided with the real world. 2 episodes have been removed from streaming in the Philippines after the country complained about a map used in the show. The Philippines said the map is a violation of its sovereignty because it asserts China's claims to the South China Sea. Beijing lays claims to a huge maritime area within the so-called 9-dash line, but the resource-rich waters are also contested by the Philippines, Taiwan, Brunei, Malaysia and Vietnam. Earlier this year, Pine Gap was removed in Vietnam from Netflix services following a similar complaint by the country's broadcast authorities. Investors in a new digital currency named Squid, after the hit Netflix show Squid Game, were left wondering where their money went after the creators ran off with an estimated $3.4 million. The cryptocurrency was launched last month and promised to allow investors access to an online game. After rising nearly 700% in 3 days to a value of almost $2,900, it suddenly crashed to zero, with the creators disappearing from social media platforms. Experts are warning investors about the risks of scams in the lightly regulated cryptocurrency market. The US Supreme Court is now considering whether to allow legal challenges to a controversial abortion law in the state of Texas. Supreme Court judges have heard oral arguments on whether abortion providers in Texas and the U.S. Department of Justice can challenge stringent laws implemented in September. The Texas law allows individuals to sue anyone who helps a woman obtain an abortion after 6 weeks of pregnancy. That is before most women are even aware they are pregnant. The Biden administration says the law effectively denies women their constitutional right to an abortion. The conservative majority Supreme Court had voted in September not to stop the law's implementation on procedural grounds. It's the time of year many Mexicans believe the dead will come to visit. Streets and houses are decorated with skeletons, flowers and colourful skulls, with many dressing up to welcome the spirits. While it may sound somber, it's actually a moment of celebration, as Jaime Ocon reports on the festivities back home.
Dia de los Muertos, or the Day of the Dead, is one of the most festive holidays in all of Mexico. It is commonly mistaken as a Mexican version of Halloween, but this holiday is meant to demonstrate love and respect for deceased family members. In 2008, UNESCO recognized the holiday on its list of intangible cultural heritage of humanity. Today, Mexicans from all religions and ethnic backgrounds celebrate Dia de los Muertos, but at its core, the holiday is a reaffirmation of indigenous life. I spoke to my aunt, Jackie Garcia, to find out a little bit more about the holiday and to explain why it's so important to the country.
Celebración mexicana que se utiliza para honrar a los muertos. Lo festejamos el día 1 y 2 de noviembre. Es muy importante ya que es una celebración de las más profundas y más dinámicas, que ya tiene muchos años, traspasa fronteras, traspasa generaciones, lo celebran nuestros hijos, nuestros abuelos y generalmente se ve esta celebración en todo México, en todo el país.
During the holiday, almost everyone dresses up as skeletons, symbolizing the dead being brought back to life, and to signal that rich or poor, everyone has to go at some point. But Mexico isn't the only place where the dead are worshipped. Here in Taiwan, remembering the dead is common, but usually done in a different way.
Como aquí en Taiwán, tenemos un día de descanso que se llama Qingmingjie. Y esa es como vas a donde se murió esa gente. Y es el igual, pones comida o lo que gustaba donde se murió esa persona. Pero es bien como serio en Taiwán. En México, ¿por qué está tanto positivo de energía y por qué son así las festividades?
Pues la gente trata de recordar a los muertos más allá de la muerte como eran en vida. Si, por ejemplo, una persona era muy alegre, si le gustaba la música, si le gustaba comer, procuran ese día poner todo lo que a esa persona le gustaba, llenar de flores, llenar de coronas de colores muy vivos para que no esté tan triste ese día, pero normalmente es como era la persona que ya se murió. Si la persona que ya se murió era muy alegre, tratamos de recordarlo de esa manera.
That happiness and positive energy is still strong, even during a pandemic. With thousands of lives lost during COVID-19, this year the holiday hits even closer to home. This is an altar, or ofrenda. Centerpieces like this are at the holiday's core, but these aren't altars for worshiping. Rather, they're meant to welcome spirits back to the realm of the living.
Esta ofrenda, a diferencia de otras ofrendas, contiene un memorial en donde todas aquellas familias que perdieron seres queridos durante esta pandemia pueden venir a despedirse de una manera más amigable. No tenemos nombres, pero sabemos que fueron varios, que fueron muchos. Estos corazones personifican o simbolizan cada una de esas personas que fallecieron durante la pandemia.
There's much that the world can learn from Mexico's Day of the Dead. Making light out of a dark situation might just be the perfect way to move beyond the pandemic and celebrate the gift of life. Kama Xu and Jaime Okan for TaiwanPlus.
Love is in the air at Taipei Zoo. Well, it could be. A female Malayan tapir has arrived on loan from Singapore, and zookeepers hope she will mate with their own tapir. The 8.5-year-old female, called Putri, is still getting used to her new home. Once she's settled in, the plan is to introduce her to the zoo's male tapir, Mosu, to see if they hit it off. An endangered species, scientists believe there may be as few as 3,000 Malayan tapirs left. Thanks for watching TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Check out the TaiwanPlus News app, YouTube and website for this show and more. Stay safe and see you next time.